our tech guy for the Manuscript Society. Has been doing this for a long time. I'm back in the hot seat here as your moderator for just a little bit. Normally that's been done recently by Jay Guidemore, who's done a great job working with Lee on getting these Manuscript Monday meetings together. But as Lee said, tonight's a little different. It's a meeting format. We're going to be chatting with each other. We're going to be talking. I see some folks I know and some folks I'm not sure if I know, but they're all coming in, and your lovely faces are being put on the screen. You can turn your camera on or off if you need to. You can turn your mic on and off and you need to. If the dog's barking, feel free to turn it out. If the dog's more interesting than the speaker, leave your mic on. That's how we're going to do that tonight too. So with that, let me tell you a little about what's happening. Manuscript Society is our sponsor. We're doing a Zoom meeting tonight because we figure the weekend after Thanksgiving, it's probably a good way to just get together and find out what's going on. We're doing it now because it's just a good time. We invited our Manuscript Society members. We may have some folks who are not Manuscript Society members that are certainly welcome to be part of that too. Lee will be letting people in as they join us, which will be great. Tonight's kind of a free-for-all. We want you to share what your interests are. If you're looking for something, things, your specialty, if you have a piece you'd like to share, we're going to let Jim Goldman and Barton talk a little bit about the upcoming event that's going to be happening in next year in 2025 in May, that we're headed to New York City for our conference. We're going to talk about, get some more information. If you have any tech challenges, Lee's mentioned that. You may want to scribble that number down too. I'm going to move this slide in just a little bit, but he also sent you his information in the chat. So we're going to open it up to a virtual gathering of friends. As I mentioned, this meeting is going to be recorded. It may be made public. We may put it on our YouTube channel. We may not. That's up to our president, Jim West, to decide how he wants to handle it. But keep in mind, you will be recorded. And if we do put it up there, then your like I said, your lovely faces will be up there too. So have your camera ready, and if you got a special item you want to share, that's great. If you got a question, if you see someone on with us that you wanted to chat with, feel free to chat with them and talk to them a little bit. And we're just going to hang out and kind of chill at the Manuscript Society virtual recliner. I've undone my belt a couple of notches because it was quite a weekend, and I'm sure it was for you too. So with that, if you want to, you can raise your hand with the little raise your hand icon there, or you can just wave to me and I know that you'd like to see what's going on and you'd like to share something too. So we're going to say, have you read any good books lately? What have you collected? I'm going to start off by asking, first off, after saying thanks for coming, is there any special topics or subjects that we haven't covered that you'd like to cover in the future? So unmute yourself. Let me know what's going on. I'm going to rearrange the look here so I can see who's on with us too. And if there are things you want to know, we're going to keep track of this. I see. Oh, Jay's here. Jay, you get a night off, huh? You're muted, my friend, for now. But
thank you.
That's
I
it.
appreciate it.
That's good. No, I'm happy to do this. Thanks for letting me sit in, and I hope I can cover it nearly half as well as you can. I see Ed here and Brad's here.
It's the other way
Goldman.
around.
That's good. Ellen, it's great to see you, Ellen. Kyle, I don't know if we've met. Reverend, have we met?
No, I've been part of the Manuscript Society for a couple of years, but this is my first time presenting on here, so it's exciting to be able to see you all and to have a great forum for those of us who love collecting and a little bit of buying and selling.
That's great. Good deal. And Pat is the editor of our Manuscript News, and she always keeps us up on what's going on. We'll give her a little time to chat about what's happening. Pat, how are you?
Doing well.
That's good. I know. Yeah. There you go. That's for sure. And I see Barton is not practicing the piano, which he does many hours a day. An outstanding, an amazing member. He's on our New York City 2025 committee as well. Former board member, former president, and a great addition here too. Thanks for coming again, Barton, to be part of it. Right. Brad's working the archives. You still there, Brad?
I am here.
They haven't gotten rid of you yet?
No, I've been there a little over 32 years now.
That's great.
So I doubt I'm going anywhere. By the way, Bob, your package arrived today.
Good.
Late today. I'll go through it tomorrow and see what you sent me.
That's Bob Hopper. He's talking to Bob Hopper, whose name tonight is iPad. He's got them right there too. And Jim, you are not. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brad. I didn't mean to cut you short. Go ahead,
Oh, I
Brad.
was just going to say, and of course, our IU Hoosiers went to 11-1 this weekend
Yeah, but who's counting?
after we trounced our arch rival Purdue 66-0.
Yeah.
Toes were cold in the stadium, but other than that, it was a good day.
The hearts were warm, though, huh?
Exactly.
That's very good. Good deal. That's great. Jim, you're not in Manhattan overlooking the city, are you?
No, I'm not in reality, but
Cheater.
I figure for the theme of what I might be discussing, that would be an appropriate background to put up.
I think that's great. We will certainly get to
Yeah.
that too. And in just a little bit, we're going to go. So are there any topics or subjects, and Jay's taking notes on this too, because he's our Manuscript Society host and current guru, things that we haven't done that you'd like to do, or things you've seen in the past that you'd like to go a little deeper on, any particular subjects that might be of interest to you and to other Manuscript Society members or to potential members. You're all mic'd. You're all unmiked for the most part, Barton and Jay. You can be, in Ed too. So feel free to unmute yourself and just fire away. And if you have anything too.
Well, I'll go first.
Yeah, please.
I think all the variety of subjects that we've had have been great so far. I can certainly try to put together a list of maybe some other people that might be interested in doing something for you and email that to you.
That'd be great. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Send it along to me or send it along to Jay. Jay's looks like he's attempting to unmute himself. There he goes. You're good, Jay.
Yeah, send him along to me, Brad.
All right, I'll do that.
Joel Silver will be speaking in January.
Yeah.
It won't be a presentation. He wanted to sort of more of a Q&A and all that. So
Okay.
I'm going to be sending an email out to some folks about questions we want to ask him, but he's happy to talk about Lily and the Lily Library and stuff. He didn't want to prepare a presentation. So
tell us more about that, Jay.
His talk was going to be about Lily's collecting. I can't remember Lily's first name. The
probably
formation of the Lily Library. Yeah.
Probably Josiah K. Lilly.
Yes. And he's going to, he's more than willing to participate, but he didn't want to do a formal presentation. He just wants to have it be more laid back discussion like, and talk about Lily's collecting. And so what I'm going to do is draft up some questions to ask him and then just throw it out to the participants to ask additional questions.
That's great. Good deal. Great. Ed Siskin, how long have you been a member of the Manuscript Society?
I don't know, maybe 30 years.
30 years. Man, you've seen it all, huh?
I wouldn't say that. I on the board for about 8 years.
Sure.
But it's been a wonderful society, and I really appreciate it.
That's great. Anything to share with us tonight? Any thing from your collection or one of your favorite pieces of all time that you've collected? Or
I didn't dig anything out. I've been in and out of the hospital the last couple of months, so I've been sort of way back. But
I'm sorry.
I'm fine now, I guess.
Good. And what is your specialty? What do you like to collect? The areas that you're interested in?
Oh, mainly Revolutionary War era. I specialize as much as anything in free franks.
Oh, no kidding. Okay. Yeah. Explain those to folks who may not know what a free frank is.
Well, postage back in the Revolutionary War times was a very expensive proposition. To mail a letter from Philadelphia to New York took about 3 or 4 hours of a craftsman's time to pay for it. So he would be making maybe 10 cents an hour, and the mail would be 20 cents or 30 cents equivalent. So if you were in a certain position, you could send a letter for free, and that was a big deal. You still can do it today if you're a congressman, and if you look at mail you get from your local congressman or senator, you'll find a printed signature on it that to enable it to be sent free, and that's called a free frank. In 1873, they canceled everybody else's right to send a free franc. For example, a governor used to be able to send it, or a president, or so on. But after 1873, only members of Congress were allowed to send things for free. You get into some fascinating items. I mean, for example, one of the specialties I have is trying to get a free franc of everybody who signed the Declaration of Independence.
Wow.
Of the 56 or 57 signers, depending upon how you count it, which is an interesting question in itself. There are only free francs known for about 25 or 26. And I have all but one.
Do you?
So it's,
Who are we waiting on?
well, a North Carolina congressman, but hopefully, the only one that I'm aware of was bought by a very wealthy collector and then donated to a museum.
Oh, wow. No
So
kidding.
that's in circulation right now. But you can find some very interesting things. Like, for example, when I say that number of signers of the Declaration of Independence was 56 or 57, here's the problem, and I think some of you know that. When the Declaration was approved on December 4th, on July 4th, 1776, only two people signed the approved draft. Hancock, who was the president, and Charles Thompson, who was the secretary of the Congress.
Mm-hmm.
They put together a fancy copy of the thing, and starting on August 2nd, the members would sign it. But Thompson never did. So there are 56 signers on the document we now know, but Thompson isn't one of them. But Thompson did sign it on July 4th.
Oh, no kidding.
That's one of my favorite free francs. Only two of them known of his free franc, and I have both of them.
Wow, that's incredible. Very cool.
But then you have the interesting question: who was the last one to sign the Declaration, and when? And the answer is Thomas McKean, who was there and voted for the Declaration on July 2nd and July 4th, but then went off to lead the Delaware Army as one of Washington's battalions. And he didn't come back until a number of years later. He became president of the Continental Congress in 1780, and he asked them to take the Declaration out of storage so he could sign it then.
Another great story. Wow, that's great.
81.
Thank you.
And this is
Go ahead. Go
Bob
ahead.
Hopper.
Bob Hopper.
One, Ed, it's really good to see you. It's been a while. One of the projects I've been working on, of course, is the residual collection of Forrest Sweet and Julia Newman, whose family donated them to us. And we've been selling them at auctions over the last year and doing quite well. I just sent quite a few free francs from that collection to John Resnikoff, and they'll eventually be in a sale, though they're 99% of them are unheard of mediocre senators from after the Civil War. And yeah, boy, they were sending that mail and signing everything. And so there are a lot of those.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's good. Ed, have you heard this story? And I've read it. I can't confirm it anywhere, that there was a Union general who was a Union general, because a lot of the Civil War congressmen and senators got positions in the military during the Civil War, that free franked his horse and sent it back to his farm. Did you ever hear that story?
I never heard that story, but it is possible. there was no limit to the weight or the characterization of mail that could be sent through the post. And I know there are records of children being mailed
Right. Yes. Hmm.
and chickens,
Chicken.
live chickens, and in one case, a rattlesnake.
No kid. Isn't that wild?
That was an
Wow.
attempted murder, as a matter of fact.
Oh, wow. Isn't that wild? Oh, my goodness. Isn't that amazing? Very interesting. That's great.
The interesting thing about it is that the box that contained it didn't have any oxygen in it, eventually. And when the box was open, the snake was dead.
Wow. Attempted murder. Oh, that's very interesting. Very good.
One of the
Kyle, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Ed, I was just going to mention real quickly. I was 8 years old, and I was in the bicentennial play at our school, and I played John Hancock.
Really?
I still remember my single line, and that was, "I'm going to sign my name so big that even King George could see it."
That's right.
I needed it too because I had really thick Coke bottle bottom glasses back those days.
Isn't that wild? That's great. Kyle, what do you collect? Tell us a little about, and so where's home first off? Where are you? And what do you collect? We don't want your address because someone will come take your stuff, you know?
No, Scottsbluff, Nebraska. We are the westernmost part over by Wyoming and Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And I have Diversity Autographs, LLC. I bought and sold some. More collecting, but also have done some dealing at a Martin Luther King Jr. contract. Bought
Nice.
and sold some things like that. My favorite, though, I started when I was a kid, when I was 8 years old, actually. There's a fellow that you might want to talk to named Tim Hughes out of Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And he has Rare Newspapers, Inc., but in those days it was Hughes's.
Right.
And he would have this print catalog that he would mail out. I can't even remember how I saw it, but I was always interested in history, so I started collecting these antique papers in the 1700s and such when I was a kid. And I left it for a long time as an adult, but then about 20 years ago, I had some time on my hands around the holidays, and I thought, there was that group that tried to get to the Northwest Passage north of Canada, and they got frozen in, and I'm thinking everybody died. Well, I started looking it up, and Sir John Franklin, of course, led that. And I admired the man. He was a strong believer. He also hated corporal punishment. He was very much pro-sailor and that kind of thing. He was a very progressive governor of Tasmania in those days, Van Diemen's Land. And one of the first things I was able to get, a fellow gave me a wonderful deal on eBay on a full deed from Tasmania that was signed by him. I have a few letters of his, but this one is actually from just 4 months after, or 4 months before, rather. He went on his fateful journey out to the northwest of Canada to find that passage, one from which he never returned. And he's the only one for whom we know the date of death. It was June 11th, 1847. Wow. So I've gotten quite a few things. In fact, the other day I got an actual plate that he owned from Tasmania. And it came down through his daughter's husband's family's collection. So I've been a big one for Sir John Franklin through the years.
Oh, that's great. That's good. What got you interested as a kid?
Oh, I loved history very much. One of the things that kids would do, I memorized the presidents in order when I was about 7 or something like that. And I still remember being up by a tree at a baseball game, and some kid said, "Can you name all the presidents in order?" And I could. So I think I still can. But vice
we won't test you. We won't test you tonight.
Yeah, that wouldn't be real exciting. Vice presidents, I have no idea. So
that's so great. Thanks for that. I really appreciate that. Barton, what have you been up to, and how are things out in Reading, Pennsylvania?
I want to say to Kyle that I admire him having the document from Tasmania. We've been to Tasmania 3 times, I guess, and have friends there. But Tasmania was on the trip of the Beagle, Darwin's ship, going around the world. And Darwin actually spent it was about his 33rd birthday there, and said, later on said in his writings that if there was any place that he would leave England for to settle, it would be in Tasmania.
We do.
I can see, if you've ever been to Tasmania, you can see why. It's a very interesting place.
Mhm.
Very
Unique
interesting.
animals and things. Mhm.
Yeah. The current project that's keeping me off the streets and out of trouble is Alfred Russel Wallace and his interest in spiritualism. And I have a friend who is a very eclectic collector, collects books and autographs, and he has in his possession now a painting, 19th century painting that he bought in Baltimore that turns out to be a portrait of a young Edgar Allan Poe. And there's going to be a Poe Congress in Paris sometime in 2025 that he's hoping he can present this to. And at the same time, I have been involved with it through the the FABS, the bibliographic organization. We have a monthly meeting of it, people interested in 19th century history. And one of the members of that is a guy by the name of Copley, who is a professor at Harvard, who just wrote a book about, he's a Edgar Allan Poe expert, and just wrote a book about Poe and is going to be a biography just published. And he's going to be, I guess, the chairman of this meeting, which now my local friend is hoping to attend. So I got a tie-in. But I have a book which I'm working on, and from Alfred Russel Wallace's library, called Poems. Let me see the exact number. Poems from Inner Life by a lady by the name of Lizzie Doughton. Lizzie Doughton was an American, Massachusetts, Plymouth, lived from 1829 to 1913, and she was into spiritualism, and she channeled several people, including Edgar Allan Poe. She gave tours, gave shows where people paid to hear her channel people like Shakespeare, where she was reciting poems that Shakespeare recited to her in the spiritual life. And Edgar Allan Poe, a bunch of poems by Edgar Allan Poe, which are in this book that was in Alfred Russel Wallace's library. It has Wallace's signature, and that's really the only link to or autograph the deal. But it has a nice signature of Edgar Allan Poe from his library, of signature of Alfred Russel Wallace. And her poems are really very interesting and very well written. And you say, well, this could be Shakespeare, or this could be Edgar Allan Poe, and it's a very interesting thing. So I'm still working on it. But Lizzie Doughton, Doten. I don't have her autograph, but the book has it has Alfred Russel Wallace's signature, and it has in the Edgar Allan Poe her Edgar Allan Poe channeling the poems that she wrote channeled by Poe. He has underlined or marked the chapters that he thinks are important to him. So it's an interesting project, and I'm hoping to learn more about Alfred Russel Wallace and about Edgar Allan Poe.
That's great. And we're looking forward to hear more of it when you come up with some more thoughts or ideas or conclusions for that matter. That's great. Very good. Thank you. Pat Vaccaro, our editor of the news. What have you been up to?
Well, oddly enough, I've been up to putting together an issue of the news.
No, what a surprise.
Also the digest.
Yep.
Going out tomorrow.
Oh, great.
Mm-hmm.
Sneak preview. Got anything for us that we can't miss that we want to know? It'll make us open it up as soon as the email arrives.
You know, a couple of things have turned up recently. And I actually have two stories to share, both of which have to do with, well, the hero of the story in both cases is the internal publications editor. One is in the upcoming issue of the Digest. A man in Chicago had run across a stack of old books just lying on the sidewalk. Clearly, they did not belong there. And his dog was very curious about them. So he swept them up and took them home. And I mean, these were significantly old. I mean, they were, in Latin and German, and they were trashing Martin Luther. So, Martin Luther was still a thing.
A thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So this goes back. He thought, well, perhaps they're stolen. So he contacted the University of Chicago and the Newberry Library. The usual suspects.
Mhm.
And they weren't missing anything, but the Newberry kind of, got the bit in their teeth and started digging in. Now, there are various accounts of this, and the one that's in the Digest does not include this detail. But one of the stories was that the mystery was solved when the curator at the Newberry was working on an article for the newsletter or the magazine of the Newberry, and doing her due diligence and fact checking, ran across an image of one of the books on an auction site, and thought, aha, okay, so we know who sold one of them. Now we just figured out who bought the book, and that may be the person that all of them belonged to, and indeed it was.
Wow.
Yes. So
Wow.
this happens when we, fact check our articles before we go to press. We
Fact
find-
checking? What is fact check? What is that? Fact checking?
Yeah, really, I know. I was like, go down yet another rabbit hole. The other one, and this is not. I feel terrible. This is not in the news in the Digest, but and the story goes back. I think the search in this case went on for like 20 years.
Yeah.
Someone had bought album of photographs in a flea market in Paris. And they didn't look like much to begin with. They started flipping through it and realized that there, among the other photos, were pictures of Nazi-occupied Paris.
Wow.
Someone had taken a pretty big risk to get those photos. And someone appeared to be a good photographer. I mean, that the photos were framed properly, like this, so casual snapshots. Somebody knew what somebody was doing. So, digging and digging and trying to find where these might be. And in the end, the smoking gun was in an issue of a Paris company's employee newsletter from the 1960s.
Really?
Where someone had written an article about their former colleague who had taken these photos. Remember back when, 20 years ago, when the Nazis were on every street corner.
Wow.
And I believe he did not survive the war. But
No kidding. Wow.
yeah.
That's a great story.
The value of looking for things. I was at a talk this summer where a niece of George Gershwin had heard that he had actually written a diary journal while he was in South Carolina studying for Porgy and Bess. And so she and a couple of other family members went down, spent an inordinate amount of time trying to find this diary. And they ended up finding a little phone book that had phone numbers, and it had nothing. It was really a trivial discovery. But while looking for it, they found a shoebox that had photographs that George Gershwin had taken of shacks on the South Carolina beach that then became parts of the set of Porgy and Bess.
Wow.
So sometimes you just have to get lucky in your searching, and you may not find what you're looking for, but find something better.
There you go. That's great. Thank you, Bob. Go ahead, Barton.
There's stuff out there. I've always been fascinated by the story of Karl Marx's library. which disappeared after his death. You know, he died. He had no very few friends. There were like 12 people at his funeral in London, and one of them was Edward Aveling, who was hooked up with his daughter Eleanor, and Eleanor Marx, Karl Marx's daughter, and Aveling had they had a suicide pact, and he said, "You go first," and then she went, and then he didn't bother to go. He ended up inheriting Marx's library, and it's never been. And Aveling died a year after Marx, and in the meantime, he of course Eleanor he was free, and he took up with some showgirl in London, and probably she put it on the market. So the Marx's books are probably still circulating, so we gotta keep an eye out for them.
That's amazing.
And of course, I get Aveling because Aveling visited Darwin at Darwin. He was interested.
Yeah, right. Mhm.
Wrote a book and tried to get wanted to dedicate it to Darwin, and Darwin said, "No, I don't think so. Forget about it." But
Hey, Ellen Myers, what have you been up to out there in Texas? No, you got nothing? Okay, she's shaking her head and not turning her mic off. So we're gonna go to Jay. Jay, what's doing down there in Virginia?
Hold on, I gotta get out. Yeah.
Oh, oh, you're working. Wait a minute, you're not paying attention to this? What's
No,
going on?
I'm taking
gotta-
notes.
Oh, I forgot. Yes, you work. You have one of those jobs that
Write
goes
down who all
24/7,
attended
whether you like it or not.
We have a collection of Maury family papers at William & Mary, and different people have given us stuff over the years, and we've acquired different things. And James Maury was one of them.
Oh, Maury. Yeah.
The first James Maury was the teacher to James Madison and James Thomas Jefferson, and then became a consul in Liverpool. Matthew Fontaine Maury's related, and a collection came on up at Swan's auction, and we were fortunate enough to win the bid. So we're excited about that.
Oh, that's wonderful.
There's a private collector who I want to get involved with the Manuscript Society, and he lives in Franklin, Tennessee. He's a big Maury family collector. So I'm hoping to work with him to donate his collection to us. A lot of different stuff in there about the cotton trade, the Civil War, different things. So I'm excited about that. And then today we had a open house with some of our rare science books. So we had people that come in and all that. So we had Isaac Newton's the first edition of Isaac Newton's for Kippy on display, which it was funny seeing all the physics students taking selfies with it and oohing and awing over it. So that was exciting.
That's
Other
great.
than that, it's stuff that, I was off last week, so just recovering from, being off a week and trying to avoid work or anything like that. So it took me a while to get caught up this today. So
That's great. Good deal. Thank you so much. Bob Hopper, what's going on? We'll go back to
Well-
Brad because we kind of cut Brad short a little bit there too. And then we'll talk to Jim and Barton about what's going on in New York. Bob Hopper?
One thing that's kind of amazing, the world of coincidences. I have a couple of Maori Liverpool signed consular documents. And I'm sure that Jay must have a whole bunch of those because he signed a lot of things. But if I can dig them up, I'd be happy to pass them along.
oh, that'd be excellent. Thank you.
One thing I wanted to mention, about a year ago, I was seeing a wonderful series of documents in the Washington Post book section by a Pulitzer Prize winning guy, Michael Dearda, who's in essence their senior book guy. And they were wonderful. And so I contacted him and we started having lunch, and I got him to join the Manuscript Society. And then I discovered that about 20 years ago, he had written the introduction for a book that was dedicated to the Manuscript Society. And I'm trying to get him to do something for us. So I'll talk to Pat and Brad. He's just wonderful and a great writer, but it's his job. And so he views writing things about books and manuscripts as being work. So I'm trying to find some way to have him make a contribution that isn't work.
What's the name? What's his name, Bob?
Michael Dirda, Dirda.
Oh, okay.
And he's great. He's just a great writer and a wonderful fellow. But I will try to figure out a way to get him either maybe to come to the meeting in New York. He was just at the Lewis Carroll annual. This is incredible. There's an annual conference of Lewis Carroll scholars, and he was there. And our friend Linda Cassidy, who had spoken to us in Los Angeles, was there, and they got together. And she commented to him how much she loves the Manuscript Society. So we have this love affairs that can keep going around and around and help us.
Very cool. That sounds great. That sounds great. Brad, we skipped past you there about what you're up to and what you were doing. Didn't know if you had anything to share with us besides the incredible performance of your sports teams.
Well, when Bob Hopper spoke a while ago about the value of looking for things, it reminded me of something I found on campus that I thought some of you might be interested in. And I looked up the photo in our online collection. I have it here on my phone, and I'm going to show it to you in a minute, but I'm going to give you the background first. So as you know, I'm the photo curator at the Indiana University Archives. We have about 3 million images there. We're probably one of the largest university archives in the world. And so I'm always on the hunt for photo collections on and off campus. Well, quite a number of years ago now, I had been talking to the Alumni Association for many years about having them transfer their photograph collection to us. And, you know, they were still using it. It was still at the time when people were still using photos and they weren't quite into scanning and digital images yet. So they still sort of needed them, et cetera, et cetera. Well, not too long after that, I talked to the new editor or whoever it was, and they said, yeah, we want to get rid of that. And I said, okay, great. I'd like to come over and see exactly what you have and give you an idea of how long it'll take us to box them up and get them out of there. Well, I was over there one day going through stuff, and I came across a vintage print of a photograph. It's the only one I've ever seen before or after. And it shows the captain of our football team with our then coach Childs and a couple of people from the student newspaper, et cetera. And there's one person in it who was an assistant football coach here at IU for one season in 1915. I'm going to show you the picture. I want to see if any of you recognize the person I'm talking about. I'll get it up close to the screen. Does anybody recognize somebody famous in that photograph?
Now you can change your screen view to get just Brad, and there you go. That you may be able to do that because he's the guy who's talking. Keep talking a little bit, Brad, so people's screen will go to you. And it looks like it's a great picture. It's a great picture.
Do you want
Can
us
you
to
see
yell it out?
If you know it, go ahead.
Jim Thorpe?
Exactly.
Jim Thorpe. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Jim
on,
Thorpe
your-
on the
your
far
left.
left.
On the far left. Whoa, check that out.
He was an assistant football coach at IU for 1 year in 1915. He coached the punters and the backfield. And legend has it that when they were at practice one day, he kicked what turned out to be a 100-yard punt during practice. And I have other photos of him, but they are all halftone prints from newspapers or the yearbook. The yearbook has, I don't know, three or four or five images, I don't remember now, of him. One of him in a suit and tie that has been used in biography, Jim Thorpe, because the author said that was the only photo she had ever seen of him wearing a suit and tie.
Wow.
But when I came across this photograph, I pulled it out and I showed it to the people at the Alumni Association. I said, I can't believe you have this photograph here in your files. I said, And I pointed to Jim Thorpe and I said, "Do you know who that is?" And none of them knew who he was.
Wow.
I said, "That's Jim Thorpe." And I gave them the whole story. So that was kind of a fun find for me.
Yeah.
And that photo is in the archives now. If you go to the Indiana University Archives photos website and type in Thorpe, you'll see the various images I have of him, including that one.
That's pretty
Yeah.
impressive. That's
Yeah, it was-
very cool.
Brad,
that
where'd
was
the
kind of-
collection come from?
I'm sorry?
Where'd the collection come from? The photo come from?
That photo was in the IU Alumni Association's photograph files. They had
Wow.
about, I don't know, 4 or 5 file cabinets of
Wow.
photographs they had used over the decades for the Alumni magazine and before that the Alumni Quarterly. And they had no idea that. So as of right now, that's the only vintage print photograph I have of Jim Thorpe at IU. All
Wow.
the others are halftones
Mhm.
that appear in newspapers and the yearbook. And if you don't know what a halftone is, it's a photograph just made up of little dots. If you look at a photograph in most magazines, especially older magazines, even today, magazines, newspapers, and if you look at it through a loop or a magnifying glass, you'll notice that they're all made up of little dots, and that's called a halftone print. And it's not a vintage photograph. It's not a negative, which is far superior. So that was a nice find for me that day.
Yeah.
That's great. That's very impressive.
And you didn't have
That's
to buy
great.
and you didn't have to buy it.
No,
Jay's worried about his budget. Oh, he's always worried about his
No,
budget.
I love finding that being
And
that
I-
that stuff transferred is even better.
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
should
yeah.
say that I have in my own collection here at home a panoramic photograph of a football game in which Jim Thorpe is playing. You can't see Jim Thorpe. It's just basically of the whole field from
Mhm.
maybe a press box or something. But on the back, it has the 2 teams that are playing and that Jim Thorpe is in the game.
That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah.
And Jim Goldman lives not far from Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, a town that
Yeah.
was named such in 1953.
I am at this evening visiting northeastern Pennsylvania. We're about an hour from Mock Chunk, now known as Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
And I read that in the Wikipedia story, which I read last year. It's an interesting thing. Apparently, his widow sold his body for money, something like that. Little interesting story there.
So what do you
Yeah.
got? What's up? We'll talk about the what's coming up in New York City, but anything from your
Yeah, yeah.
collection or things you wanted to share before we get to that?
Yeah, I do. So I have let me just grab something here. I've recently been about knee deep in James Monroe, our 5th president. Let's see if I can do this right. There we go. This book, for
Very
those who want biographies, is really well done. And one of the things that's interesting about it is this author, Tim McGrath, must have spent years going through letters and also John Quincy Adams' diaries. And those are the 2 principal sources for this book. So it's all original material that he used as sources. He went through day by day and he correlated letters written on certain dates back and forth to kind of reconstruct the chain of correspondence about different events in Monroe's life. It's pretty comprehensive. It's not just as president. I mean, it's from, when he was a student at what college in Williamsburg? All the way through his death. And then I finished that one and moved on to, and I hope this works. Yeah, that worked. This one by Cunningham. This just focuses on the presidential years in more detail. So the 2 kind of make a nice contrast, but they're the manuscript connection here is, well, first of all, the original source material, because back then everything was almost everything is handwritten.
Mhm.
But I have some Monroes in my collection. Mine are not particularly as president. I have things related to the War of 1812. So that's why I'm kind of refreshing my Monroe background. So that's been interesting history. I'm about halfway through the presidency. I've read most of the other biographies of Monroe and been to one of the workshops. Um, it's a great subject because he was a public servant from, well, I mean, he went right into the army with Washington, right, as a kid out of William and Mary, and then was in public service his whole life and did nearly everything. And and because he wrote so much, there's a great paper trail
Mhm.
to learn from. His handwriting is awful. Okay, Brian.
Yes, it is.
You've seen it. It's like, oh my God, this man, he just scrawled. But, the historians have figured out what most of it is. So it's interesting.
Mhm.
Yes.
That's too good. Very
Sarah,
cool.
Sarah Bon
Very-
Harper, she's the.
Hang on. Oh, go ahead, Jay. Hang on,
I'm
Brad.
sorry.
Go ahead,
Sarah
Jay.
Bon Harper, the executive director of James Monroe's Highland, which William and Mary owns. She found a letter where he's like writing his horrible handwriting. And at the end, he says, "Oh, and if you can read this, please do what I ask." I knew it was horrible.
That's very good. Brad, you had a follow-up too?
Yeah, I completely forgot to mention that Jim Thorpe's granddaughter received her master's and PhD from Indiana University.
Wow, isn't that wild? That's very cool.
There's a good
That's
connection.
great.
She
Good
she
stuff.
used to come into the archives, and I remembered that it's kind of striking how much you can see Jim Thorpe in her face.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's neat. Good.
Possibly
Before,
the greatest Native American athlete in all of history. That's amazing.
Yes.
yeah, incredible. Very cool. There's a big bronze statue of him as you come down the hill into Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania on the right-hand side. This little
Is there?
memorial and monument to him too. Everybody stops there for pictures. Most people have no idea who he is, the whole bit. It's too cool.
Yeah.
Anybody else want anything before I turn it over to Jim Goldman to talk a little bit about what's coming up next year in New York City? And with that, take it away, Jim. What do you got?
All
I
right.
I got a picture. Do you have anything to share that's on the screen?
No, I was going to do it verbally. Because the
All right, I'll
pictures
just
will
give you
show
one.
up. The pictures will show up in the Manuscript Society news coming out shortly.
This is true. Let me just do one quick thing here and just let you see that. All right.
Oh, that's one of the good pictures there of the Morgan Library. that room is so photogenic. You can just take a picture in any direction, and it's gorgeous everywhere.
Just one of the many stops we'll be making, sir. Right?
Yeah. So the Manuscript Society annual meeting, which, as you all know, moves around from year to year, will be in New York City coming up in April 2025. And I, along with 4 of my excellent colleagues, have formed the planning committee for this meeting. And New York is a big city, and it's a big budget, and it takes a big crew. And so we've got 5 of us, including Brian and Barton, who are just doing a great job, and George Snook, who lives in New York, and Peter Clarinet, who also lives in New York. There are feet on the ground folks, and everybody's been contacting different institutions and different restaurants to try to line everything up, which is a way better than me trying to do it myself. I just feel like the orchestra conductor, make sure everybody's playing the right part at the right time, but the musicians are the ones who are doing the work. We have a really good lineup of venues, starting with the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Drawings and Prints Department. I can't, George would be better at describing the actual material that we'll see, but drawings and prints, of course, we're more interested in the drawings as a Manuscript Society, but I think we have a general interest in art and art history in our society. So that'll be interesting. That's Thursday morning. And after lunch at a French bistro near Times Square, we head off to the New York Historical Society, which is New York's oldest museum. They have a huge collection. There's a description that'll be in the Manuscript Society News and on the website, or you can look at their website, but enormous collection. The only drawback there is they are under construction of a new wing, so we won't be in the new library, but we will be talking with staff and learning about what they've got. Following that, late afternoon, we're going to head nearby to the New York Public Library branch at Lincoln Center. This is the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts, one of the leading collections in performing arts, which makes sense. It's at Lincoln Center. It's a few blocks from Times Square. Being in New York, it's the right place to have that collection. And we have not been there on the previous Manuscript Society trip in New York in 2000. And I've never been to that collection, but from Peter and Brian and George all say it's phenomenal. So we're looking forward to that. That's going to be a long day for those of you who join this trip. We have 3 venues in one day. And in New York City, there are 2 speeds. You'll hear this from me a lot. There are 2 speeds. Go as fast as you can or get out of the way. And Thursday, we will be going as fast as we can.
That's great.
Friday morning, we'll visit the New York City Municipal Archives, where George has been on a preview visit, and they've shown him some great stuff. And we're going to see some real New York history, because even those are municipal records, they're official records. Nevertheless, you've got signatures, you got a picture of history, just like we did in San Antonio at the San Antonio County Archives. Very similar kind of experience. I have lunch at an Italian restaurant near the Morgan Library Museum. And then probably what will be one of the highlights of this meeting is the afternoon at the Morgan Library Museum. Many of us have visited there before, either solo or as part of the Manuscript Society at different times. Brian, do you want to give a quick thumbnail on that?
Sure. Actually, the dog is doing a great job. Whose dog is that?
I don't know.
See, I told you, if the speaker is too boring, just turn the dog on. Jim, I think you got the hook, buddy.
No, I'm not. I don't have the dog.
We're going to the Morgan. We're going to break ourselves up into 2 small groups. One group is just going to kind of tour the library and wander around on their own. There's plenty of exhibits. My friend Roger Wick, who's at the head of Medieval Manuscripts, is going to do a program for us too, pull out some of the best stuff there. So we'll get a little private classroom orientation and an overview from him, and then we'll also be able to walk through the library. We're trying to get into the exhibit. It's the last month of the exhibit, and it's about who the librarian of the Morgan was, who really got that library started. We're not sure if that's going to be open, but if it is, we're going to squeeze our way in and get a special tour of that particular exhibit. If not, just the overall library is an amazing place to watch. There's plenty of things to do, so we'll probably be on our own. At the end of that particular day, we can stop and listen to some music in the courtyard. They have live music every Friday, and you grab yourself a glass of wine or a little snack there before we head back to the hotel. Did I cover it, Jim?
You got it. That's exactly right. Let's see. So that's when we had the music there. There's sort of a music theme in New York. There's so many songs written about New York, and we're going to be at Lincoln Center, and then there's the music after we visit the Morgan Library. And I think George may take a few people on a music tour to one of the jazz clubs. So you're going to see this sort of musical theme running through our meeting.
That's great. And I promise not to bring the banjo, so it'll be good music.
Sorry that my dog interrupted you, Jim.
That's okay.
My son came to the door, and of course, my dog doesn't realize he knows him.
That's fine. Saturday morning, we will visit I believe this isn't firm yet, but Saturday morning, probably the Museum of the City of New York, because they are open on weekends. Great collection, and very open to group tours. We haven't set anything up with them yet, but I think that would be a perfect highlight for Saturday morning. It also puts you in what they call the Museum Mile, which is the part of Fifth Avenue where the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Guggenheim and the Frick Collection and the Museum of the City of New York, they're all up and down this row of museums. So people want to wander off and make their way down Fifth Avenue. That's a good time, especially late April. Good time to be walking in New York. It's not too hot, not too cold. We don't have anything in the midday on Saturday just to let people wander. But our plan is to have an early bus departure, say around 3:30, 4 o'clock, to head downtown to the South Street Seaport Museum and have about an hour to an hour and a half to look at some of their collection. It's not principally manuscripts, although that is, I'm sure they have some of that, but it's a lot of seafaring artifacts related to the nautical history. I'm sorry, that's not the right word. The maritime
history, sure,
of New York, which of course, because New York is where it is because of the harbor. So we'll learn a lot from that. We will have our closing banquet dinner in their facility, in their newly renovated, I'm not sure what, meeting space or auditorium or what the space actually is. And we have a speaker lined up who is an expert on New York architecture, the history of New York architecture.
Great.
His name is Francis Moroni, Morrone, and you could probably Google him and learn a little bit about that. On our optional, as tradition, we have an optional Sunday trip out of town. In the morning, we will head out to the Morristown National Historical Park, which was George Washington's headquarters at one point during the War for Independence. They have a terrific collection, both buildings and artifacts. And Peter has worked magic to get somebody from the staff to agree to come in on a Sunday and open up the library for us. So I hope that commitment holds up 5 months from now. I tell you guys, folks, as a meeting organizer, people say things in November, December. You hope they come true in April, but that's what we're planning.
Yeah.
We'll have lunch in about 20 minutes away in Orange, New Jersey, at a fine culinary institute recommended by our host Brian.
Yeah, so blame it on me. It's called the Star Tavern, and it's got the best pizza around.
So there you go. You can't get better pizza than at the Manuscript Society, right?
And it's choicy. You don't want pizza, you go someplace else. What can I tell you? And then we're headed over to the Thomas Edison Historic Site, where Thomas Edison Labs were, where and the labs are still there. It's a great National Historic Site. The Black Maria, where he did a lot of made his movies, the Great Train Robbery. He's got his recording studios there with the largest megaphones you've ever seen. A really gorgeous tour. His study, his library. Again, it's a Sunday, but I'm working. See if we can, if I can be as fortunate as Peter to get one of my friends who is the archivist there to come on down and open some things up too. Bart Cox was a former member of the Manuscript Society, passed away. His widow donated his collection to the Edison Historic Site, and there's some really amazing things there that if we can get them pulled out and take a look at them, that'll be part of it. If not, there's plenty to see. A lot of manuscripts on display, little movies and orientation videos, and that'll kind of be our afternoon.
Yep. And the only other thing to add is that on Tuesday evening at the beginning of the week, or just before the touring begins, we'll have our normal opening night cocktail reception and fun auction at a restaurant across the street from our hotel. The restaurant is called the Quality Bistro. I think it's a bit pretentious to name your own restaurant that way, but whatever. Throw in that editorial comment. But
what did Ty Cobb said? If you can do it, it ain't bragging.
Right. So the three of the five of us on the committee have eaten there to test the food before you guys go there, and it isn't quite a nice restaurant.
That's right. One of them is Jim, and you can see he's still alive. So I guess we're okay.
So there you go. There's the proof. So we'll be across the street. We've got a room reserved, and we'll do our fun auction there. And I think Bob is helping get that set up. So thank you in advance for that, Bob.
That's Wednesday
And-
evening, isn't it? Not Tuesday.
Oh,
Wednesday.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's
Wednesday.
right. Wednesday
I
evening.
misspoke. Wednesday evening.
That's okay.
Sorry.
No worries. Thank you, Barton. Good deal. And
And-
that's kind of it, right?
Yeah, and the hotel's the Warwick Hotel, which has a long and storied history. It's over 100 years old. You guys can read about that anywhere. And I'm looking forward to it. It has been a challenge to do this affordably. Arguably, nothing's affordable in New York, but we're going to make it work.
Good.
And we'll keep you in the loop. Good deal. Thank you for that too. Actually,
You're
I want
welcome.
you to know that when I put that first slide up, let me do this right now about the Morgan, I had the wrong dates there. So that's April, not May.
Yeah.
So when you see that,
Yeah, it's
that's April, not May. My apologies for that too. And with that, I'm going to keep going and let you know what's going on here. Your Manuscripts Journal is a quarterly publication. Brad Cook is our editor of that. He does an incredible job. There's some amazing stories, some really, really solid stuff. And that is our journal. It's been around a long time, going in its 73rd year, and he does an amazing job with that. We talked about Manuscript News and what Pat Vaccaro is doing with that. That's coming up. That's been since 1980. Keep an eye out for that. That's just one of the benefits of membership. Our Manuscript Monday recordings, maybe this one, maybe not. I'm not sure. It's up. Someone else makes that call as to whether this one, after it's recorded, goes up. You can go on our YouTube channel and see more than 20 of Manuscript Mondays on demand with all kinds of great subjects and great topics. You are all Manuscript Society members. I'm going to let you know, sometimes we put out a certificate of attendance. There's not one available for this, but if you want something for continuing education credits, write it up and we'll get somebody to sign off on you for that too. You can watch this one may be up there, but you can watch any of our meetings at any time. I want to thank you and thank the trustees and the staff. Thank you, Jay, for putting it all together. Thank you all for joining and being part of it. It just is just too much fun, and I'm delighted that you're there. You are a Manuscript Society member, but if we're recording this, see, this will go up and get the people who aren't to get us to sign up. And with that, any closing thoughts before we wrap it up for the night?
Just a shout out to Lee Kathenes for all his tech support. And he put this talk together. He put this session together. He did everything. So
there he is. He's cool. I like him.
Thanks a lot, Lee. I can understand why you like him.
Yeah.
Good job,
Thank you,
Lee.
Jay.
Thank you for everything you do
Oh,
for us.
And by the way, thank you very much. This was a great time. Got to meet a few folks. Barton Smith's even got an Antarctica shirt on, so he's a fellow polar interest, I would imagine. Nice to meet all of you guys, and I'll definitely be coming back and looking at going to New York in April. Sounds great.
Good.
Very good.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. That's great. Ellen, anything to close with? Are you good? All right, she's all good. So with that, I will say good night. Get out there and work off the turkey and the pumpkin pie we ate. We spent some time in the pool today, but not nearly enough. So
All right.
we'll see you next month. Jay will be running the next one, and we'll see you all then. Good night, everybody. Thanks so much for
Bye-bye.
joining Manuscript
Bye.
Monday.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Good job.